But of course, this is an iconic TV show. I love the show. The inspiration for Alexa came a lot from Star Trek. I know Jeff Bezos is a fan. Instantly, he made an extra in one of the new Star Trek movies. Fun trivia for today. And if you've seen Star Trek, you'll see that they interact with the computer in the show just by using their voice. It's nothing else. And the idea is, there was this idea of ambient computing where they interacted with technology that was all around them. They didn't have to reach out to their pocket to go to a phone. They could just say something like, computer do this, or computer tell me this, and it would actually do. And that's the sort of idea that we've always had with Alexa, which is not just this one gadget that maybe sits in your living room, but this idea of Alexa everywhere. This idea of ambient computing, where you can really talk into the ether and things will happen to you. And again, if you've read a lot of science fiction, and if you've seen a lot of science fiction, especially mid 20th century, you'll find this idea a lot. And I think it's finally coming to fruition. You'll know most of these things, where on a device there are a few technical things that happen, and I'm going to really compress and give a summary. So the first thing is something called a wake word. What is a wake word on most devices? Exactly. Right, where there is a wake word engine on each of these devices that lets you know that basically figures out, okay, now is when I start interacting with the user. Now is where I start processing what the user is saying. So there is an engine on each device. Once that's done, whatever the user says, that text is converted, that speech is converted to text using something called automatic speech recognition. Of course, there is some context that goes into it. People figure out, okay, this is some contextual thing that the user is saying based on various sources. The most important thing, I think, of that is what's called natural language understanding, which is the sort of core of any conversation. It could be chatbots, it could be skills, it could be other different sources as well, where you sort of understand what the user is really trying to say. Now, this is not easy, and we'll talk a bit about the tech parts about why it's not easy, but as humans, we are able to understand context very well, and this doesn't translate very well to computers. So, natural language understanding breaks down sentences into things called intents and slots, which are basically used to figure out what's actually happening. Intents are essentially, think of it as the intention or meaning behind what the user said. So, if a user asks for the weather, their intention is to get the weather. And the reason you need this is because unlike a traditional screen-based interface, there are multiple ways of saying the same thing. I can say, what's the weather, get me the weather, tell me the weather. I can also say something like, is it hot outside, is it cold outside, or do I need an umbrella, which in your weather app, you wouldn't have. You'll have one interface, you'll have one button, you'll have one menu. All of us will have the same thing, and there will be one way to find the weather. So there are these so many different ways in conversation I can ask for the same thing, which is why you need natural language understanding. So, as part of natural language understanding, there's something called dialogue management. And this is a little difficult because, again, you have to sustain a conversation between a computer and a user. For those of you who have heard of the Turing test, it's almost been like this sort of fever dream for computer scientists, to crack the Turing test, where a person can't tell the difference if they're talking to a human or a computer. So, dialogue management is where that dialogue actually happens. And in fact, we have something called the Alexa Prize, where if you can sustain a 20-minute conversation with an Alexa skill and you build that skill, you can win like $1 million. And no one's got even close to 20 minutes. It's that difficult. And of course, once all your processing is done, it hits your skill, it hits your backend, you send out a response, and Alexa again takes care of converting that text into speech. And we'll talk about a few ways how that speech is made to sound a little more natural and not robotic, like a computer just speaking out words. Right. This is going to be my challenge for today. Yeah. No, I need stronger hands, I think. Alright. So, the common theme basically is this whole concept of data-driven machine learning. Now, all of the speech to text, the text to speech, all of that basically needs to be really scalable. It needs to be across hundreds of millions of users around the world in different languages with different contexts, and it has to be data-driven. So we needed a model that is robust to noise and ambiguity. And noise could be in a bunch of ways. Noise could be in the form of data that we get, as well as external noise and things like that, and any sort of ambiguity, especially while speaking. Also, we need to create what is called a ground truth. So when training in most machine learning models, you create like something called a ground truth, which is empirical, right? Where you say this is the input, this is the output, figure out what the model is. right? And we had to find rather a way to create this relatively inexpensively, because if this cost a lot in terms of time and resources, then actually scaling it up would be very difficult. And of course, obviously we started with English, but we had to port this to new languages and new domains. Currently Alexa supports 15 languages, including Hindi, which I'm very proud that it does. So that same model and that same process had to be ported. So what we essentially came up with is something that looks a little like this. Now, there are two phases to how this data-driven machine learning works. There is a training phase, listing at the bottom, and there is an inference phase. Now, what happens in the training phase is that creation of the ground truth that I spoke about, where there is some input training data and there are some answers, which is the truth. We know that this is 100% accurate. We have created this, and this is completely empirical. So we know, okay, this is perfect. This is fed into a trainer, which essentially generates those models that I was talking about. It generates some machine learning models. So now, once the training phase is done, and this of course happens continuously, but before you start, you obviously have a training phase. It goes into the live inference phase when people are actually using it. So in the inference phase, you have an input which goes to a decoder and then runs through the same models that have been generated in the training phase. And those models are able to generate the answers. The input could be anything like converting speech to text, it could be understanding text, so it could be either the speech recognition or the natural language understanding part. They all go through the same model that has been created in the training phase. And that of course outputs the answer. Yeah, so this is a very, very high level overview of how this data-driven machine learning actually works. Now, we'll go into some depth later. Just as an aside, Alexa is available in 80 plus countries and 15 language variants. This is something we're proud of. So we have, apart from Hindi and English, Spanish, French, Italian, Japanese, etc. And even English, for example. So you see Australia, Canada, US, UK, and India. There are English language models for all these regions, but there are different language models. And the reason we do this is because people speak English differently in different countries. And it had to be not just recognizing the accent, but it had to speak in the local accent, but it also had to be contextually aware. And I'm going to talk a bit about that. In India, of course, we have something called a skill. I don't need to tell you in depth what a skill is, but for those of you who don't know, think of it as a voice app. A skill is essentially anything anyone can build, including people in this room, to enhance the capabilities of Alexa. And in India alone, we have, worldwide we have 100,000 skills, and in India alone we have 30,000 skills. So that's a great number. That's largely thanks to people such as yourself. So thank you so much for teaching. Right. So one thing we figured with Alexa is about meeting you all in the moment of need. Again, like we said, it's not this idea of this gadget that sits in your house, but really this idea of Alexa everywhere. So maybe at your home, at your workplace, also on the move, in your car or in your earphone. So for instance, you're leaving home and you get like a weather traffic report, but you might get like meditation and news in the afternoon, homework, health TV shows in the evening, and cooking and timers, that sort of thing. So it's something that really, like in the day of your life, it can meet you in that moment of need. Right. So now comes the action part. So we essentially want to make a smarter, more contextually relevant Alexa for everybody. And what that means is few things. So we need Alexa to be context aware. We need Alexa to sound natural and allow you as speakers to be able to speak naturally to Alexa. We need Alexa to be self-learning. Right? It has to get smarter with every interaction. And most of all, these are the two things that we're really working on, is for Alexa to be knowledgeable and to have a level of competency so that users can trust it for pieces of information. So what we're going to do is today we're going to talk about each of these aspects of Alexa and how we use ML and AI in improving some of this. So let's talk about context awareness and what that actually means. Now, for humans, context somehow comes naturally to us. I don't know what it is in our learning process, evolution, etc., but it comes naturally to us. So for instance, if I say something like, what's the weather today? And you reply and say, it's nice, pleasant, 28 degrees. And I follow that up with a question like, what about tomorrow? Now that statement taken alone, just that one statement taken alone has no relevance at all. If If I just say something like, what about tomorrow? You'll be like, what about it? It's Sunday, I'm off, whatever. Yeah, but the fact that it was preceded by something about the weather in a particular city, it takes on a different meaning. Now, for us as humans, that's very easy to understand. We pass that instantly. But again, for computers, that's very difficult. So that's what we call discourse memory, where you have memory of conversations you have already had. And you might think, hey, isn't this like an easy problem to solve? But the more and more deeper you go into that same conversation, the harder it is for the computer to retain that context. So for instance, I just gave you that one example. What's the weather like in Bangalore followed by what about tomorrow is a difficult problem to solve, but we have actually been able to solve it with what we call probabilistic context carryover. Now, how we achieve this, and we're going a little technical, is we use something called, there we go, we use something called LSTMs. Now, I'm not going to the depths of what an LSTM is, but it stands for long short-term memory, and it is a type of recurrent neural network. And it's mainly used when you want to predict something in a certain sequence. So in machine learning, when you have a problem where you want to predict something, what comes next in the sequence, a lot of people are using this thing called an LSTM, a long short-term memory, which uses a neural network to sort of predict what comes next. So what happens is, essentially, we have an initial interpretation where the NLU, I spoke about natural language understanding, it classifies the sentence into the intents and the slots. So that's what's happening. You're getting the entity recognition, which is the slots, and what the intent is. Now, each sentence that Alexa says typically used to maybe just get into the NLU update and and then into your skill or whatever. But now we're actually pushing that to like a contextual interpretation phase, where what happens is there is an intent carryover LSTM. There is a neural network which basically sees what the intents and entities that have been carried forward. And this is what is used to have this, what we call a discourse memory. So if I say something like, who's the captain of the Indian cricket team, and it says Virat Kohli, and I say, what is his age? It will actually tell me that, okay, he is 31 years old, because it's able to carry forward the intent and the entity from the previous conversation. So this is how we're able to make Alexa a little more context aware. Now, this is very specific contextualization, but of course, context could mean a bunch of different things, right? It could mean something like having context about the different sounds around. So right now, if you see, Alexa can identify speech, right? If I say, Alexa, what's the time? It tells the time. But it up until maybe a few months ago, it did recognize different sounds that were happening earlier. So we introduced something called Whisper Mode, and I really hope the video plays. You have got this mic? Yes, okay. So there's a small video which shows you what Whisper Mode is. So let's see if it plays. Oops. I'm going to try that again.
Rough day. What's for dinner? Shh. Alexa, open Domino's.
Hi, welcome to Domino's. Would you like to place an order or track an order?
Okay. So this is live, by the way. If you have an Alexa device at home, you can enable it on your app and try it out. And you might think that, hey, what's the big deal about this? But it's actually a very, very, very difficult problem in computer science. Because you have to, when someone whispers, a couple of things change. Obviously, the fidelity of the audio signal itself is difficult to catch. So that comes with a bunch of technical problems. But if you really notice, people will change slightly how they talk, or their accent might change, or how they enunciate a word might change because they're whispering. So it's really difficult to actually get what the users are trying to say. And with Whisper Mode as well, we had to use like an LSTM to predict again if, hey, is the user whispering or if the user is saying something in a normal voice. So basically the customer's utterance, you get the audio signal, and that goes to another LSTM which sort of figures out, okay, the user is whispering or the user is actually saying something in a normal voice. To reply, this part is easy if you use something called SSML, or Speech Synthesis Markup Language, in your skills, which is it's a general technology. It's like HTML. It's not Alexa specific. Any voice tech can use it. You can actually just add a simple whisper tag and put whisper. So that part is fairly simple, but actually trying to figure out if the user is whispering or not, we have to use an LSTM and to sort of predict whether the user is whispering or not. So that's another contextual thing that we added. In fact, another thing we added is acoustic events, which is adding recognition of sounds. Now, there are different sounds that you hear on a day-to-day basis in your home. For instance, something like a window breaking or like glass shattering is instantly like everyone turns around and looks. So we actually came up with something called Alexa Guard, which right now is US only. Where if you're going off on vacation or you're going like for dinner, and you can say something like Alexa, I'm leaving, it turns on something called Alexa Guard. So it listens for suspicious sounds like windows breaking and things like that, or any other sounds, even if there are people talking, and it can actually send an alert to your phone. So if it hears any of these sounds, it sends an alert to your phone saying, hey, there may be some suspicious activity in your house. And of course, if you have the entire suite of, like a Ring product and things like that, you can actually get your home CCTV on your phone just to make sure that there are no intruders. And in the US, I know that there have been a couple of cases where people have got notified of burglaries that were happening live in their home, seen it on their phones, and called the police and caught the robbers, etc. So it's interesting how this actually works. It listens to exact sounds like things like glass breaking. And again, even for something like this, we use an LSTM. So all those acoustic events are basically modeled. So there are different versions of glass breaking, etc. And it listens for something like that. So it could be either a smoke alarm going off, or it could be like a glass breaking and so on. And the thing is, there is multitask learning because, and this is the tricky part, what if someone were to break into your house and talk while the smoke alarm or the glass breaking happened? So it was really vital for us to be able to figure out how to listen for both speech and sounds at the same time. So again, I don't know the details about how they did that, but essentially the LSTM does multitask learning where it listens for not just acoustic sounds, but also if people are talking and things like that, it can listen to both at the exact same time. Alright, so we spoke about context aware. Let's speak a little bit about Alexa sounding natural and people being able to speak naturally to Alexa. I think that's the biggest, biggest draw of like a voice user interface. You don't want something where the users have to think about what they have to say. Then you've really lost users. Then you're just writing an if statement, basically. Right? If the user says this, do this, they should be able to speak completely naturally. So let's take a look at some things we did. Now, this is neural text-to-speech. So I can actually talk a bit about text-to-speech because it's something that interests me. So the first ever text-to-speach was in the late 30s to early 40s, and how it worked was very interesting. So they had different sounds that your mouth makes, like ah, ee, etc. And it was laid out in something like a piano. And you needed a highly trained person to make a sound. So if I have to say something like, hello, my name is, that person would almost like play the piano and say, hello, my name is. And these videos are there on YouTube, so you can check it out. It's very interesting. Of course, from there, we have gone on to what most of the world right now uses, which is called concatenative text-to-speech. This is what right now most of the world is using, up until maybe a couple of years back, where all the different phonemes, does anybody know what a phoneme is?
How it sounds.
Yeah, it's a unit of sound, so things like this. If you Google any definition of any word, it will show you like these weird symbols which show you how the word is pronounced. So that's a phoneme. So what happens is there's something called a Viterbi search, which basically maps the probability of a bunch of words sounding like something else. So that Viterbi search happens, and all those words are concatenated together. All those phonemes are concatenated together to make up a word. So if I'm saying computer, it's computer, right? And all that is concatenated to form a signal, which is then spoken out. So that's how typically it works. It's good, and right now you're probably hearing concatenative TTS on your phones, on Alexa, etc., and it's fairly good. But to take it to that next step, we have basically come up with a deep neural network, which basically what we call neural text-to-speech. And I'll show you an example where it's very, very minute. It's very subtle, but it comes across as little more natural when you talk. So hopefully this plays if you can keep the mic close by. So the first one, and again listen very carefully, especially at the end of the sentences and at the start of sentences. You can find very, very subtle difference. So I'll play the first one.
Fireplace Market is a public market overlooking the Elliott Bay waterfront in Seattle. The market opened August the oldest continuously operated public farmers markets in the United States. It is a place of business for many small farmers, craftspeople, and merchants.
Yeah, so this is what is currently exists in most places, and I'll tell you what to listen out to. Listen out to farmers, craftspeople, and merchants, as well as when this sentence ends and the market opened up. Right. So I'll play neural text to speech now.
Pike Place Market is a public market overlooking the Elliott Bay waterfront in Seattle. The market opened August 17, 1907, and is one of the oldest continuously operated public farmers markets in the United States. It is a place of business for many small farmers, craftspeople, and merchants.
Yeah. So again, like I said, very subtle, but it comes across as just a little more natural than concatenator. Now the next version of this is something, again you can see it on YouTube, it's called Newscaster TTS, where the same neural text-to-speech is taken to the next level, where it sounds like a newscaster is almost reading it off of a teleprompter. And this sounds so much more natural. There are a few demos again, but it's not up for public usage just yet. But you will see the significant difference even from the neural text-to-speech. So this is one way we are actually getting Alexa to sound a little more natural. Now, how that works, again, we're going a little technical. So there are two parts to how this neural text-to-speech again is achieved. So one is actually the phonemes and the features that I spoke about, which is how each word and each syllable should sound. Now, what you have to realize is when we're speaking, again this comes naturally to us, but our intonation changes about what came before and what came after as a sentence. I know my sentence is going to end now, so I pause and then I continue. Right? So this context generation takes care of that. It creates different sequences, and this is basically focused on the representation of the speech. Right? It is speaker style specific. Again, on Alexa and Polly, you can choose different voices. So this really focuses on the speaker itself. You have another aspect which is called speech production, which doesn't care too much about the speech specificity. It just focuses on getting. So basically you get something called a MEL spectrogram, which is a representation of speech. And the speech production, the vocoder, what we call the vocoder, basically takes that MEL spectrogram and tries to replicate it as close as possible to its original signal. So basically it's about preserving the fidelity of the signal. So that's how the neural text-to-speech actually works. While speaking naturally, it's not just about text-to-speech, it's also being able to say things naturally to Alexa. So this might sound like a very trivial problem. So early, even now, you say something like, Alexa, add apples, butter, and jam to my shopping list. It's a very natural way to say it. It could add something like this to your shopping list, right? One thing, apples, butter, jam. Which, again, is a slightly difficult problem to solve in computer science. But now, if you see, it can actually take these multiple different slot values, figure out, okay, apples, butter, and jam are two different things, and put it as three different slots. So this is something that's available now, of course, you can try it out. Also, you can have multiple intents in one utterance. So earlier, if you have to play a song and turn off the lights, you have to do the two separately. You have to say something like, hey, turn off the lights, and then play the song. But now we are at a stage where, while allowing people to speak more naturally, I can say something like, Alexa, play Sunflower, and turn off the stage light. Right? And essentially, it's simple. We have just added like this concatenator feature of a coordinator, which makes it simple so that you recognize the two different intents. So the intent recognition, the NLU algorithm says, hey, there are two different intents. So let's run those two in parallel for this particular sequence. Yeah. So this is another interesting one, which is natural skill interaction. So a user can say something like, Alexa, ask Ola to book me a cab. But this relies on the user knowing something called a skill invocation name. Now every skill has something called an invocation name. Similar to how you have to click an app to open it or type out the name of a website, you have to give the invocation name of the skill to open it. Now, it is a decent system in my opinion, but it relies on the user remembering the name of that skill. And that also hopes that the developer has a good skill invocation name. We've had developers who have built great skills but have had terrible invocation names, and people just forget. So again, allowing users to speak more naturally, we have something called this natural skill interaction where a user can say something like, Alexa, book a cab. So what happens is, it goes through the speech recognition, it goes through a natural language understanding, and then Alexa figures out the K best skills that can perform that job. And at the same time, there's an algorithm to contextually rank each of those skills by taking a whole bunch of different contextual signals. So the signals, in this case, the signals could include things like, okay, maybe there are 10 skills that can allow you to book a cab. Out of those 10, 2 skills have really high ratings, the other are all terribly rated. Maybe your preferences have tended towards one of those skills by the same developer, something like that. So all of these different input sources go to give you a contextual ranking and saying, okay, skill ABC is the best skill for you at this moment, so ABC will book a cab. Alright. I think it's a great system. It's something that we are working on, and we have actually released it for developers in beta, and we've called it name-free invocation, where if you can do a particular thing, you can register saying, hey, this is what my skill does. So suppose your skill lists concerts nearby, and someone asks Alexa, saying, hey Alexa, what are the concerts nearby? Your skill would go into K best skills. Right? And that would go into a contextual ranking of the user, and maybe the user has either used your skill before, or your skill is very highly rated, and your skill would be bumped to the top, and a user would interact with your skill directly. So that way discovery also improves of your skill. You don't have to push the skill invocation name or force the user to enable the skill. They can just directly use it. Alright, let's talk a bit about the self-learning aspects of Alexa as well. Okay, here we go. So, how many people here have kids? Okay, very few. And I don't have kids, but I have a niece who constantly listens to that alphabet song. Right? It goes A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3. It's a very catchy song. So right now, even if you said something like play the ABC song, Alexa would say, sorry, I didn't get that, because that's not the actual name of the song on Apple Music or Amazon Music. The actual name of the song is the alphabet song. But now, again, if you had either both speaking naturally and some self-learning, this should ideally work. Right? And there are a lot of songs where the chorus is different from the name of the song, and we remember it by the chorus, especially in Bollywood songs. So you would say play so and so. So this, what we call automatic equivalence class learning, actually detects an error. So when someone says something like play ABC song, and it doesn't play it, and then after that, if the user says, you know what, sorry, play the alphabet song, and they listen to the full song, there is a very, very high probability that ABC song is the same as alphabet song. And if enough users do that, or if X number of users do that, then the next time a user says play ABC song, you can actually play the alphabet song and assume that it's the same. So that's what happens with self-learning. It actually figures out, okay, users followed it by play the alphabet song, they've listened to the full song, so it probably means the same thing. And of course, this is applied to a whole bunch of different interactions as well. Alright, we talk a little bit about knowledgeable, and a lot of people go. Okay. So, we're talking about neural semantic parsing, and I gave this example earlier. If someone asks a question like, how old is India's cricket captain? Again, it's difficult for a computer, because if I would have said something like, who is India's cricket captain? And Alexa said Virat Kohli, and I say, how old is Virat Kohli? It would give me the answer, no problem. But in this, we are actually using a knowledge graph, right? Creating an actual knowledge graph where there are relations between something like age of cricket captain, size of, etc. And it's able to give the answer, which is Virat Kohli is 31 years old. Similarly, we also have where we can rewrite queries. Now, a lot of people, while speaking actually, would say something like this: is Andaman still a union territory now? Not grammatically perfect, also has a lot of noise in that sentence. And a lot of times Alexa would give an error. Right? It would say, sorry, not understood. But what we're doing is we're taking that first pass and we're paraphrasing it by stripping out some of those words like still and now. In which case the question is fairly simple: is Andaman a union territory? Which our knowledge base can understand, and it can give you the answer. So it goes through a couple of passes where some words, commonly used phrases, are stripped out, and then you actually get an answer saying, yeah, sure, Andaman Nicobar is still a union territory. So it's allowing for the user to be a little more natural when they speak, and it's also self-learning. And next time a user says something like that, is Andaman still a union territory now, you would still get the right answer. Right, yeah, so the first pass fails, but the second pass goes. And lastly, we're talking about Alexa's competency, about how we started off with literally 13 skills when we launched, late 2014, November 2014. Now we have 100,000 skills, but the error rate shouldn't have increased. But the error rate actually has gone down quite a bit, as you can see. So this took obviously a lot of technology, and this essentially was through deep learning, transfer learning, and active learning. Let's talk quickly about each of these. So this transfer learning is quite interesting because you have different domains that people use Alexa for. You have things like restaurant and weather data, which has some relation to recipe data. People can talk about things like biryani and chole bhature, when asking for restaurants and meals, but they would also talk about that in recipes. So it's important to have some transfer learning algorithms that create knowledge graphs from one and can actually transfer it to another domain, especially in the context of things like Indian food, where a lot of users are interacting with Alexa for questions like this. At the same time, we also have active learning where, and this is something we have teams that do this, where we have labeled corpuses which are very similar to a ground truth, where we create labeled data sets. And of course, that goes through some machine learning models which create predictions for the unlabeled data. So we are actually trying to increase that particular data set that we have. Here, it's very important what the targeted data is. So choosing that targeted data to create this labeled corpus is actually what's the most important, because if we choose a bunch of noise, the rest of this is completely useless. So there are teams that actually look at what data we should look at, and then they are labeled and then put through ML models to help in the inference. And very quickly, Alexa is now available in Hindi. So just some quick stats: we have like 750 plus skills, we have like 30 brands, and we have Hindi and English multilingual mode. How this was a challenge was basically because the phonetic representation of Hindi varies a lot. You will see everything from writing Hindi in English in Latin script to writing in Hindi. Right? And we also have different spellings of the same word, like pyar ka panchnama is P-Y-A-A-R versus maine pyar kiya, which is P-Y-A-R. So we had to formally, unfortunately this hasn't been formally codified anywhere. Mobile revolution came here only now. People are thinking about Indic languages, ML, etc. So it hasn't been formally codified. So we had to actually work a lot on something like this. Some of the other linguistic challenges were the spelling variability when you changed it to English. I think a good example is like Darya versus Darya. A good example is how do you in English spell palak? P-A-L-A-K, which is what we palak money, whatever. And what is the word for eyelid in Hindi? Palak, right? How would you spell that? It's the same way. So those things were a little difficult, and as also with Bollywood there's an ever expanding vocabulary, like Swag Se Swagat launches, everyone's asking for that. So how do you really keep up with something like this? So these were some of the challenges that we faced when coming up with Hindi. So we had to change the entity resolution a little bit when it came to Hindi specifically. It wasn't just a phonetic search, but we also added a fuzzy search along. Right? We had to have both of these different ways of searching for something to work together. Otherwise, it wouldn't work as well in Hindi. At the same time, yeah. Also, we had to make Hindi sound very natural. So I'll give you a couple of examples. So very quickly, Neural TTS in Hindi, and listen to this. I don't know if you can hear it. I don't know if you can hear it too well, but you can skip this. Yeah. So basically, it was just an example of neural versus concatenated TTS. And yeah, we also have multilingual mode where you can speak in a combination of Hindi and English, because most households in India will not speak just the one language. Right? A lot of Hindi includes a lot of English words and vice versa in India. So how we had to do that was have the same components with a language detection module just for India. And this language detection is obviously, it's on the fly, it's detecting. So it can switch languages and sort of figure out what the user is saying based on what they're saying. So there is a language detection module that we added as well. And yeah, like I said, the audio goes here and that's the text to speech here. If you haven't used it, there's a great skill called Clio, which is sort of, you're interacting with Alexa in different languages and you're helping train it for different Indic languages. So we have like 150 plus dialects, we have millions of phrases. So if you have an Alexa at home, install Clio, speak to it in different languages, and that will help us launch in different languages in India as well. Right. I just want to quickly mention the strength of our developer community, which is you. I think you all have made this possible. So thanks a lot. We just photos of a few of the sessions we have done. And today is the first ever community day worldwide for Alexa, which is a great thing. So if you meet the organizers, please go thank them for actually doing this. And thanks a lot for attending this. Yeah, this is the other community. And And yeah, we have like a lot of developers and a lot of student influencers as well who are doing this. I just want to end with this slide. When we started in 2014, we just had some sensory data, right? What's the time, what's the weather, and things like that. We've slowly gone to being able to model phenomenon, to Alexa making few intelligent decisions. Soon we'll be in a stage where Alexa can actually reason, and many years from now we'll have artificial general intelligence where you can actually be like in the Star Trek universe. Anyway, that's it for me. Thanks a lot. It's still day one.
I invite Tom to present the momentum to Sohan as spoken for his